Neeshee and I are back for part 2 of the full moon in Cancer for the month of December 2018. And now we are starting with Libra rising. Sun or moon, but it works best for Libra for the rising sign. Okay, so for Libra rising, the full moon is in the 10th house. And the 10th house has to do with your work in the world, your sphere of influence, your reputation, your responsibilities, what you're known for. And it's aspecting your 2nd house, your 5th house, and your 8th house. Okay, so because it's has to do with your creative work in the world, whatever that is, something pleasant, something that will give to you will be, you'll have on that day. Even if you're not actually at work on that day. I'm not sure what day the 22nd is this month. It might be a Friday. But anyway, maybe you'll get some recognition. Your boss will express some appreciation for you. Or if you have your own business, like this would be a good time actually to start your own business. Actually, it would be best to look at that in terms of your individual birth chart and to get a Muhurta for that, which is it's a technique where you pick the very best day and time to begin something based on your birth chart. But anyway, that's what it makes me think of, simply because it's the 10th and Rahu is there. And wherever Rahu is, it's a house that gets developed and will be getting developed over the next 18 months. And it's in a water sign, the sign of Cancer. So you may be dealing with people from foreign countries. You may actually go to a foreign country. And your emotional security will be being developed as it relates to the work that you do in the world, your sphere of influence and responsibility. The full moon is also aspecting the 2nd house, which is very important for getting your emotional needs met, your financial security and resources, your family, your close family and friends. The full moon aspecting that. And Venus is there too, and they're aspecting each other. So maybe there'll be some really pleasant thing here that happens. Maybe you'll be able to add to your resources somehow through your work in the world. And then the 5th house of creativity is involved. It's aspecting that. And that could be directly related to your work. Perhaps you come up with a creative way to do something, or something entirely new that will add to the well-being of this area of life. And or it could have something to do with children. Again, well, not necessarily fertility, but it could have something to do with children in your life. It's something good. And then the 8th house is inheritance, your partner's resources. So you see there's an 8th and 2nd house theme here for Libra rising. Your partner's resources, your bond with your partner, and as Neeshee says, it has to do with your life force. So you want to take this from here, Neeshee?
Sure. Well, I think the emphasis of this full moon for Libra is creation, because that 5th house is being activated, right? And that's the manifestation of our creative inspirations, or, you know, children. All that we give birth to is seen through the 5th house, all that we create. And then they have the actual full moon with Rahu in the 10th, which is, as we said, the domain of one's career, vocation, responsibility, that which one does. So I think there's a strong connection, obviously, between the 5th house and the 10th house, and that's what really stands out to me when I'm looking at this for Libra people. They're needing to really put their energy into something, and that something is really important for their career, or, you know, a major part of what they're doing in their life. So maybe they'll get a lot of creative inspiration through this full moon and see something that they need to develop that's going to boost, you know, what they're involved in already. So I see this as a nice, like, magnifier, enhancement of something they're already involved in, but there's probably some area of it that they haven't really nurtured enough. And I think that's going to be nurtured during this full moon.
Yeah. So, and also it's sort of similar to Virgo rising in that the opposite of Rahu is Ketu, you know, which is, in this case, it's the 4th house. Right. So perhaps you've been not in the world, not doing anything in the world, or maybe hibernating at home. And usually with this kind of an axis like this, if things are really chaotic at work or in your business or whatever the work is that you're doing in the world, it's because you need to go to where Ketu is. And this is a balancing act here. And you have Saturn there in the 4th. And so that's not an easy thing. You may not really want to spend a lot of time, you know, going within, because Saturn being there is not a fun thing. You may feel at times that you're isolated in the world. Perhaps that your friends and your family are not as available to you for some reason. But if things are chaotic in the outer world, it means go into your inner world and deal with your feelings and what's, you know, you need to do in your inner world. And then that stabilizes your outer circumstances. They're always connected to each other. And then the work that you do here in your inner emotional life is going to positively affect your outer life, you know, the work that you're doing in the world. And like Neeshee was saying, the 5th house is really important here. And it's ruled by Saturn, which is in the 4th. So this could be like one of the most creative times of your life, really. Even though you feel alone in many ways, that's usually the price you pay for greatness, as they say. If you want to do something significant in your work, you do need to be alone oftentimes, so that you can hear yourself think, so you can get deeper, and, you know, as it arises, you can respond to it and not get too caught up in all the noise, you know, from friends and family and other people in your life. And then the second,
Karen.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
What you just said is interesting because, you know, Rahu in Cancer, you know, indicates the need for an internal development. And Ketu in Capricorn typically indicates the need to release a certain level of, you know, external focus and management of sort of external life. But for the Libra person, you know, that Ketu is in their 4th house and that Rahu is in their 10th. So it's kind of sort of an inverse scenario happening here. Yeah. So I think the paradox of that is sort of that through their internal development, they're going to manifest the 10th house. You know? Yeah.
I see this all the time in charts. Do you, Neeshee, where people are working with a total paradox, and it's like their whole life. So, you know, Cancer is typically the 4th house realm, and Capricorn is the
10th house realm. Exactly. It's
and
flipped.
So they're like doing this flip thing here.
It's really interesting, you know, and sometimes I get confused when I'm talking about Rahu and Ketu because they sort of bleed into each other. They're a paradox. All polarities, all opposites are ultimately a paradox. And so I think that's just highlighted for Libra people. I just wanted to point that out, that there is something about that dynamic that's going on. And if you can't understand it, that's okay. I mean, it's just what it is.
Yeah, they're like the polarities. They really are just different faces of the same thing.
Exactly. So it might be a confusing time for Libra ascendants, but they should just stay focused on what inspires them, because if they stay focused on what inspires them, they'll naturally end up in that 5th house domain. And that 5th house domain is inevitably going to go into the 10th house, which is where all this potential is. So I think that's the way to cut through a lot of the confusion that they might experience.
Absolutely. And if you do have a lot of confusion, for sure, I would recommend a career coach. Because athletes have a coach, and because they have a coach, they do their best work. And especially if there's a lot of emotional, you know, entanglements and issues that you can't really sort yourself, or you get to a certain point and then you stop yourself, well, then don't do it alone. You know, get qualified, highly skilled help. And I just think very highly of the coaching world. Their attitudes about things. It's all positive psychology. And they're not interested in, you know, maybe necessarily rehashing what's happened to you throughout your life. So you don't have to go back and dwell on those things again. It's more practical and pragmatic. It's like, okay, where can we go now? What can we do now to further the 10th, which is your soul's development as well. So it's very important. And then look, Venus in the second house. Good food. That's usually what that means, right? Healthy things, healthy food. Because Venus rules what's rejuvenating and builds you up. Mm-hmm. So this is more your realm. You want to say something about this?
It's a good time to, you know, really make use of nourishing foods. You know, nourishing foods are typically, you know, heavier in quality, but in the winter time of year, our digestive fires are in fact much stronger than any other time of year because our body recognizes the need to A, produce more heat in the cold season, and B, extract a lot more energy and nutrients out of food, especially food that's heavy. Heavy food has the most nutrition, and our digestion is going to be burning really strong to get all of that nutrition. So this is a good time, you know, to focus on some of those at times harder to digest foods. Grains, you know, like wheat and dairy, you know, the two like evils of like modern diet, apparently. They're actually the most nourishing foods, and that's why they're demonized and considered poisonous, because most people don't have the capacity to digest them. So they become poisonous effectively. But, you know, this is a nice capacity, as we're seeing with the second house and Venus. And it's a nice time of year to be eating those things. And you'll notice that those foods are, in fact, quite insulating, which is what we need during this time of year. Yeah. So I would definitely do that.
So Ayurveda, I noticed that they're very adamant about not eating raw foods.
That's right.
Cooked, warm, like drinking hot water throughout the day with, like right now I'm doing that, drinking hot water with fennel, cumin, coriander seeds, and a little bit of raw ginger in it. And I noticed that it is helping my digestion quite a bit.
No, that's great. You know, I think that Ayurveda doesn't really understand raw foods. You know, that there is actually a lot of fire in raw food, but you have to know how to eat it properly. And in any case, you have to care for your digestion, which is a heat process. So maybe one day I'll do a video on Ayurveda and raw foods.
That would be really good, because it's very confusing to me. Sometimes
it's confusing. I've spent a lot of years contemplating this very thing.
Okay. Now I know that the summer months are perfect for raw food.
That's true.
And my acupuncturist too, and I go to my acupuncturist, and he's, you know, the Chinese medical model, which is also based on the elements. Same thing. Don't eat raw foods.
They don't like raw food either. They hate it.
I know, but I love.
They all tell you that. All Ayurvedic and Chinese practitioners will tell you never eat raw food. Like in the summer, maybe you could, but you know.
And that's the other thing too. No cold drinks. But I have to. No,
that's very true. You should really always have room temp or warm drinks. Yeah. But I'm gonna get into this raw food thing and really show people what that's about, because it's misunderstood from the. I
would really appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, that would be good.
All right, it's going to be my next YouTube video. Stay tuned, everyone who's watching this right now. Stay tuned. I'm going to do this.
Okay, good. Okay, so do you have anything else to say for Libra rising?
I don't.
Okay. Just one last thing I wanted to say is that the full moon aspecting the second house, which is the critical house for the full moon, it's not actually in it, but it's aspecting it. So this means that you'll also be aware of how you're getting your emotional needs met and how you're not getting them met. And perhaps you can think about that, because the full moon's in a water sign, which is mute. It doesn't speak, so to speak. So it's more about nonverbal communication, your expressions, your body language, your tone of voice. And since this is in the 10th house of work or business, I want to also recommend for Libra rising the stream of consciousness writing practice, so that you don't find yourself having emotional meltdowns at work, which is something that's really embarrassing and very difficult to erase in people's minds. So if you have a practice of just writing out what you're thinking and feeling on a daily basis, especially after work, at night before you go to bed, so you can process your emotions, it'll help give you some grounding and clarity in that area. And if there are things that need to be discussed, you'll be clear on exactly what it is, what you want and what you don't want, and how you can request that from people. And then be okay if you don't get it, but at least you ask. So again, it's writing without concern for spelling, grammar, punctuation, or making sense. You just stream of consciousness, let it come out. And you don't stop writing for about 10 to 15 minutes. And if your mind goes blank, you don't stop writing, you just write about how your mind just went blank. And then talk about where you're sitting and what room you're in, and then you'll get a lot more thoughts come until you're done with the 10 minutes. So that's all I wanted to say about that, because this is such a critical area of life, right? Work. And emotions are typically not really, well, it's not an arena for emotion. It's not very well received there. And so you have to work with processing it. And that's the easiest, quickest way to do it. Okay, so on to Scorpio rising. For Scorpio rising, the full moon is in the 9th house and aspecting the 1st house of the body, the 4th house of the inner emotional life, and the 7th house of partners and or the public. And you know what? I just realized something. Moon Venus, that is can be a writing combination. Mm-hmm. And let me see.
That's why you've been recommending to everybody to do the stream of consciousness.
That's probably why, huh? I didn't even make that connection. How funny. Okay, so the 9th house is the house of marriage, of higher knowledge, like universities and just studying anything really. It's the house of spiritual practices, and it's the house of fortune. So when you have the planet that rules that house in that house, that makes it a manifestation planet. And then Rahu there is indicating perhaps a need to explore what you really believe, like what your spiritual beliefs are, your philosophical beliefs. And those things come out when you are married, for instance. That's where you find out what your philosophy of life really is. And when you have children, of course, then it's really important. You don't really even know for sure until you do. And then you're like, well, I don't know. I think maybe, like I had this conversation with my first husband. My daughter was, well, I guess she was like 7 or something like that. And somehow we had never talked about in depth how to raise her in terms of her spiritual development. Mm-hmm. And we were both in the 12-step programs at the time, so we were very spiritually active. And I was thinking, well, she'll be getting the benefit of that, right? Because we were using it on a daily basis. But he was like, well, no, I think that we should raise her in the same religion that we were raised in when we were young, which was Catholicism at the time. Mm-hmm. I was really, really surprised that he believed that. Isn't that funny? It sounds like that stuff comes out when you have kids and or when you're married, because eventually you'll have that conversation. And or if you're not, if you're single, this is also the house of the father, which is interesting. But it's in a water sign. So maybe your feelings around your father. And the full moon there is the giving moon. You can think about all he gave you, even if he was not the best dad, you know. There's still something he gave you. First of all, he gave you life. And then perhaps like look at how Venus is involved here. Venus is the DNA. So there might be some gifts and talents and abilities you inherited, even if you've never known your father. And what your father believes usually has a big impact on your philosophy of life too, and your spiritual practices and spiritual beliefs. So in the fourth house, it's aspecting his favorite house. The moon loves the fourth house. It's his home house. It's your inner emotional life. And then the seventh house of partnerships and the public. And it's bringing something good to all of these areas. Okay, you want to talk about it now, Neeshee?
Okay, Scorpio ascendant. Yeah, I think it is all really about this ninth house. They are needing to follow like a higher truth that maybe they haven't been following or developing because they've been locked into like the current skill sets that they have, you know, indicated by K2 in their third house. So I think this full moon might very well illuminate this area of their life and show them that this is what they need to develop more and this is what they need to follow. So I would definitely try to tune into that ninth house energy of, you know, what do you believe? What do you want your life to be structured around in terms of philosophy and as a belief system in the highest possible sense, you know? Not just like, do you believe that it's good to make money and stuff, but I mean, what is your overarching philosophical paradigm in which you're living, you know, even your very mundane life? Everyone has a sense of what life is about. And I think that's really what this ninth house is about. And, you know, there's definitely going to be some cloudiness about that. You know, Rahu is a smoky planet. It's a Chaya planet. It's shadowy. So this is not an area that's going to be making a lot of sense right now. At the same time, you're getting a nice full moon in its own sign. So there's a lot of potential that it could make sense right now. That's what I think this full moon is really about, really for everybody in a way. It's an opportunity for this Rahu house to make sense for people. You know, if they can tune in. And for Scorpio people in particular, that's going to be the ninth, right? And everything that you said about the ninth, everything I just said about the ninth. So also there's that aspect on the seventh house and the fourth house. So again, those are both pretty strong relational spheres. I think that's fine. You know, definitely there can be, Rahu is also aspecting those areas with the moon. So,
yeah,
you know, everything moon's aspecting, Rahu's aspecting too. So there's going to be this play, you know, of like, none of this makes sense. It's confusing. It's imbalancing. It's cloudy. On the other hand, there's this force of illumination upon it, you know? After all, Rahu is one of the moon's nodes. They're not really two separate entities either. So there's a lot of paradox in this particular full moon because it got joined with Rahu for everybody. So if you encounter that paradox, I think just allow your mind to dissolve. You know, don't try to get around it. Don't try to understand it. Paradox is really a means for ecstasy. It's not a means for our comprehension. So, you know, enter into the stream of life and you won't have to worry too much about whether it makes sense. Just be in the flow itself. And that's for people, wherever this Rahu moon is happening, that's where the flow needs to happen. So for Scorpio, it's the ninth house.
Wow. That makes me think of your Jupiter and Cancer. It sounded like Jupiter and Cancer to me.
That was a Jupiterian approach to it.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's so true. So what did you want to say about all this water going on here for Scorpio rising?
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of water going on. And I think, you know, the thing about Scorpio is it is a Mars-ruled sign, even though it's a water sign. So it does have that fire in it. It's the water that's churning.
Mm.
You know, and I think that meshes nicely with Rahu and the moon, because the moon is watery and also has air in it, and Rahu is always going to stir what it joins, right? Expand what it joins, stimulate what it joins. So I think Scorpio people will kind of resonate with something of that quality of Rahu with the moon, elementally even. And I think that's good. I think they're going to find a way to resonate with that positively. Because Scorpio, of course, is about rising above limitations, rising above weaknesses, getting stronger. So I think they actually have a lot of potential to really harness this energy and use it well. So,
yeah, I always like it when Venus is going through my first house. I can feel it, and it feels good. I just feel a lot more comfortable and comfortable, you know, just less self-conscious, more outer oriented. It's a nice place for the moon, for Venus to be. And what Neeshee said about you know, Rahu here in this sign, and whenever Rahu is with the moon, there's often a disconnect between the mind and the heart. And the writing practice, I just wanted to mention that. That's one of the main things that it does, which is why I often recommend it for Moon Rahu people if it's in their birth chart, because it connects the head and the heart together so that you can maybe get the most out of this transit, because this is a nice one. Definitely. Okay, so now on to Sagittarius rising, sun or moon. And for Sagittarius rising, we have the moon in the 8th. Okay, the full moon in the 8th, aspecting the 12th house, the 3rd house, and the 6th house. And then look, Sagittarius rising has 2 other manifestation planets right there in the 1st house.
Yeah, beautiful.
This is pretty amazing, yeah. So, because in GEMINI, Jupiter and Mercury are manifesting planets, as well as a planet in its own house. And here we have the moon full in Cancer. So these areas of life are going to be experiencing some concrete manifestations, as well as emotional or psychological, simply because the moon is in Cancer. Okay, so the 12th, well, let's just talk about the 8th house first, I guess. That is your partner's resources, other people's money, inheritance from the dead. It's the occult sciences, something I've been forgetting to mention with all the other signs when it's involving the 8th house. It's also the occult sciences, which is astrology, is one of those. So if you're studying astrology, you'll probably get some ahas here. That would be exciting for you. And or maybe, see, Rahu is kind of a separating influence. And when you have Rahu in the 8th house natally, it's typically not that good for relationship. But if you're in a relationship that maybe you've been wondering for a really long time why you're still there, because there doesn't really seem to be going anywhere, it's not growing, it doesn't seem to be nourishing you, this would be a really good time to end it. Perhaps Rahu will do it for you, actually. And then with the full moon there, this would be something, you know, somewhat bittersweet, but probably a good thing for you. And then the 12th house is a spiritual house. It's a house of expenses as well. And you have Venus there. This is nice. This moon-Venus thing aspecting the 12th, you can make a lot of progress in your spiritual life and perhaps get more clear on just exactly what freedom means to you. 3rd house is skills, siblings, teammates, learning something new. And the 6th house is a health house. It's also overcoming obstacles. Rahu aspecting that's a good thing, because it, well, in some ways, not necessarily for health, but for doing difficult things and having the strength to do it. It's good for that. But with this 12th and 6th and 8th house emphasis here, these are all houses that, well, depending on the context of what you're talking about, can be good or difficult, depending. So I'm going to hand it over to you at this point.
Okay, I think for Sagittarius ascendant, this is all about insights. Because Sagittarius ascendant is already philosophical, you know, by nature. Now they have a Rahu moon conjunction in the 8th house. So they might, you know, their mind expansion might produce a fair number of insights. They might start seeing connections between things. They might, you know, really start to grasp something about the essence of things that they've been maybe studying, contemplating, considering in recent time. And like we were saying, yeah, Rahu, and you know, the 8th house is about esoteric things, and including occult sciences. So if you're a Sagittarius ascendant, you're studying astrology or cards or spirituality or anything like that, this is a great, great full moon for you.
Yeah.
Really, really nice. I think Sagittarians are going to get some interesting insights. And you know, I think, you know, they're a fire sign by nature, and there's a lot of water element going on with Venus being part of this aspect, and then Moon and Rahu being in Cancer. So I think that's fine. It's a nice balance. I think they have a lot to gain from this full moon. Yeah. Looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, I can actually focus on it. Like, it would be a great time to get a reading.
Great time to get a reading, something new might crystallize for them. That 6th house aspect, you know, always a little bit concerning with Rahu being involved.
Yeah.
Some imbalances might, like I said before, come to the surface and be revealed during this time. But with that nice Rahu moon conjunction in the 8th, you might actually get some nice insights into it. But this is a great time to appeal to 8th house, you know, people, 8th house domain, whether that's, you know, an Ayurvedic practitioner or an acupuncturist or an astrologer. Definitely, I would check out that arena because there's something going on there.
Definitely. And otherwise, in hidden houses,
right,
6th, 8th, and 12th. So you might feel it, but not be able to put your finger on it, and that can cause unnecessary, you know, fear. But if you get a reading of some kind, then you'll have some light shed on it. And the full moon there will give you some light there too.
It'll crystallize.
It'll crystallize for you. And then the 3rd house, of course, learning new skills. And of course, you know, the 3rd house is a communication house. And the full moon and Cancer aspecting that is good. You'll be able to talk, maybe communicate something that you've been needing to communicate for a while. And something positive. Okay, I don't have anything else for Sagittarius right now. Do you?
I don't.
Okay, so now again, another commercial break. So if you're enjoying this video and want more on Ayurveda and astrology, because Neeshee and I are going to be doing some videos together on that, then please hit like and subscribe so that you'll get notification when they come out. Thank you. Okay, now Capricorn rising. For Capricorn rising, the full moon is in the 7th house and aspecting the 11th, the 2nd, and the 5th. Well, the 7th house is the partner. It's also the public and foreign countries, foreign people. Rahu there too just really emphasizes that. Then the 2nd house, which is an important house for the full moon, has to do with getting your emotional needs met. And 5th house is creativity, perhaps children as well. And the 11th house is income from your career, your business, however you get money. But it's related to that. And you have Venus there, Venus and the moon aspecting each other. But the 7th house is the emphasis. So the emphasis is on your partner if you're in a relationship. If you're not in a relationship, the emphasis is still there on a potential partner. So it's not recommended that you stay at home during this full moon. If possible, be with friends and family, and or just where people are. And you may meet somebody from a culture different than the one that you were raised in, and just be open to that. This could be an important relationship, because this house is being developed for the next 18 months. So, yeah, so you can see this as a kickoff of the lunar year for this, that kind of thing in life, relationships, which is everything in life boils down to two things, right, Neeshee? Love and money. So in this case, it's love and money. Look,
That's
the
right.
11th and the 2nd, these are also related to financial security, the financial security houses. And then the 5th house of creativity can be directly related to how you make your money and gain in financial stability and security. And it may obviously have something to do either with the public or with the partner. And I'm Capricorn rising, and these themes are all quite alive in my life right now. So my husband and I are working together. We're partners. And of course, as an astrologer, right, I interact with the public quite a bit. And I'm coming up with these great ideas for products and services that will be available over the next year. So it's kind of perfect for that. Yeah. You have what would you like to say about this, and especially in terms of health?
Well, there's quite a number of influences at play here for Capricorn people. On the one hand, they already have Sun, Saturn, and Ketu in the 1st house. So that's loaded, you know. Then they're experiencing this Rahu Moon conjunction in the 7th, which, as you pointed out, is a major relationship focus. I think Capricorn, you know, has a lot going on right now, and that they should be putting their energy into staying in balance in all ways. So this is a good time to cleanse, to read books about health and diet, to consider, you know, different things they're doing in their life, exercise, lifestyle routines. They should really study those things and see where can they make an improvement. Because anywhere they can improve, the better they're going to feel with all these influences. You know, Sun-Saturn conjunction, that's not easy. Saturn K2, Sun K2, that's not easy. K2 in the 1st, that's not easy either. So there's a lot going on there.
So how does that affect the body, the health with all those planets there?
Well, I'd say that their vitality is not going to be, you know, blazing during this time, you know, because especially when you have a Sun-Saturn conjunction, that really puts out the fire in a lot of ways. So a person might struggle with digestion. They might struggle to really keep like that Agni alive in them at all levels, but you'll see it at the digestive level as well. I think the same thing is true when Ketu joins these planets. You know, there can be just a deprivation of that fire element, because Sun Ketu often gives that tendency of, like, you know, self-doubt. So yeah, Capricorn people need to maintain their fire during this time, which is a principle of health. You know, in Ayurveda especially, we make a lot of emphasis on the digestive fire. I think that's the primary thing that's going to be suffering here with all these planets in the 1st house. The 7th house is definitely going to bring a lot of energy, but the question is, can we integrate with that energy? Because in order to use energy, we need to have good fire. Fire is the means to utilize things, right? To transform them, to metabolize them, to digest them. That's going to be the main question. And I think there's some nice potential here to, you know, put a lot of energy into the 7th house relationships. You know, Rahu Moon, for all that I've said about it so far, does give a lot of interesting insights and revelations, epiphanies. You know, just like if you get high, you know, you get some of those experiences as well, because your mind expands temporarily. This is kind of like that in a way. But as with getting high, you know, you have to be careful because you need to integrate those insights. So similar thing with Rahu Moon is it can get imbalancing for that reason. You know, you can kind of spin off. So I think that there's a lot of potential here, and it's just a matter of utilization.
That is so interesting how things are happening in your life and you're not always fully aware of the astrological reasons for it. And then when you see it, it's like, wow, you know, you're doing what your chart is indicating. I've always noticed that about my clients.
So trippy.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I've started working on. I started working on that when K2 entered my first house. I wasn't consciously aware of it, but that's exactly what I've been working on, is the Agni, or the digestive fire. Right. So I want to mention this book, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
It's called The Prime, and it's an Ayurveda book, basically. The doctor who wrote it, she's an MD and an Ayurveda practitioner, Dr. Kulreet Chowdhury, and I've been following it, you know, just for the digestion. And it's also for losing weight, and that's something that I've been struggling with for a number of years now. And the digestion is always involved in that. And so that's what I mentioned earlier. And one of the other, I forgot which sign it was, but like I've been drinking tea made from cumin, coriander, fennel seeds. I'll be adding fenugreek seeds to that as soon as I get them. And ginger, putting some ginger in it and steeping it. And then just sipping that up throughout the day. So I put it in a thermos so it stays hot. And it's very comforting. I really like it. And I've noticed that it gets rid of excess water weight. Things are moving on the scale. And then there comes in 3 stages. You know, you add more and more to it as you go along. But I'm still in the first stage. You take a test in it to find out just exactly how impaired your digestion is. And then based on that, she'll tell you how long you need to stay in each stage so that the detox is not an overwhelming, difficult experience. So I highly recommend it. It's very good. As you can tell, I have high regard for Ayurveda. So, okay, anything else to say for Capricorn?
Nothing more to say on Capricorn.
Okay, here we go. Aquarius rising, sun or moon. Okay, for Aquarius rising, the moon is in the 6th house. The full moon is in the 6th house, aspecting the 1st house, the 4th house, and the 10th house. So angular houses, I mean, it's aspecting angular houses, but it's in the 6th house with Rahu. So this is a house that's going to be developed quite a bit over the next 18 months. And the full moon there kind of, I see it as a kickoff, where you can get clear on what it is that you need to be doing that's of a 6th house nature, which has to do with health, overcoming obstacles, doing difficult things that need to be done, especially. And the full moon there is something that gives. So maybe you make some progress in that area, or it sheds light on something that you need to know so that you can make progress in that area. And then the full moon is also aspecting the 4th house of the inner emotional life and inner emotional happiness. And Cancer is the sign of finding joy and happiness in the little things, the small things throughout the day. And it's aspecting the 1st house of the self and the body. And like Neeshee pointed out a little while ago, whatever the moon is aspecting, using the GEMINI manifestation aspects, Rahu is aspecting too. And it's aspecting the 10th house of career, business, responsibility, reputation, sphere of influence, and you have Venus there, which is nice. So that will bring some kind of good thing here. And these are all houses that are going to be being developed too by Rahu in particular over the next 18 months or so. So let me see. So since the full moon will be aspecting the first house, that's when you get to enjoy just being, relaxing, and doing something nice for yourself. So this is happening on December 22nd. Remember that and do something nice for yourself that day. Also, spend some time in contemplation, thinking about, or just enjoying being home. And not thinking all the time about producing and producing. Though it is aspecting the 10th house too, and this is a house of productivity. It's something where you are expected to produce and to take care of things. And you have Venus there. Let me see, for Aquarius rising, let me see, Venus. So it rules the 4th and the 9th. So Venus is a good planet for Aquarius rising. So expect something good here, especially with the full moon aspecting it. Rahu aspecting it just means you'll be able to, you'll just be developing that house more. So what do you have to say about all this, Neeshee?
Well, I think this is the placement right here where the full moon's happening in the 6th house. And that's really important because that's the house of health and disease. So I think Aquarius needs to be really attuned to that. And they're an air sign. So, you know, this is a water element, but both air and water are kind of cool elements, you could say. You know, air can go the other way too. You never quite know. It depends what it combines with. But when it's combining with water, it becomes cool.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think they need to maintain their fire. And there's going to be some imbalances in terms of health that again come to the surface, and they're going to need to deal with that. I think they should consider seeing a practitioner or an astrologer.
Yeah.
To get clear on what's going on in that 6th house and what approaches they can take. As you also pointed out, it's aspecting the 1st, this full moon in Rahu. So yeah, Aquarius people generally are quite other-oriented, and this is a good time to take time for themselves. And really the 6th house is that way too. You know, it really is about getting clear on something that you're doing or that you need to do about your health, your well-being. You know, how are you going to tackle life and its apparently inimical forces at times? So I think this is an introspective time for Aquarius people, and the aspect of the 4th and the 10th, I think the first thing they need to do is just take it easy, stay at home, you know, keep it quiet and simple. And then they can go into that 10th house where Venus is and get some rejuvenation. But they need to recover before they can make use of all of that energy that they might get out there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, wherever Venus is, that's the path to fulfillment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Venus gives us that nourishment that we need at a deeper level. So.
Right. So it'd be a good time to think about basically what your work is in the world. You're creating.
What do you need to do in order to, you know,
find fulfillment,
get there and feel fulfilled by it? Because Venus can nourish us, but if we don't have the fire to process that nourishment, then we remain unfulfilled despite it being there. So that's why I think they need to do some of this 6th house, 4th house, 1st house work. Then they can go into the 10th.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do it in that order. And then what about, they have Mars here in the 2nd house. How is that relating to the fire?
What's interesting is that it's in a water sign, right?
Yeah.
There's really a lot of water going on here. It's kind of a watery time for them. I think that fire is a good sign, you know, because they need some of that. And Mars is getting a nice boost by being in Jupiter's sign. So that, you know, it's a good placement for Mars. So that's true. You know, they need to turn to that 2nd house placement right there really, you know, start metabolizing what they need to. They definitely have some of that fire at their disposal. So, you know, as long as they know what to do and they make that action and they don't, you know, sacrifice themselves instead, they'll be okay.
Yeah. Maybe it would actually help.
Yeah.
The fire.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. I noticed that when people have Mars in the second house natally, or if they have the sixth house lord in the second house natally, and it's related to Mars, that they tend to like to eat a lot of hot sauce and hot peppers and things like that on their food.
Interesting.
Yeah. My daughter has Mars in the second, and she can't eat hardly anything without putting a bunch of hot sauce on it.
Wow.
Can't help but wonder. It's like, okay, well, she's Taurus rising, so maybe it helps her. I don't know. But what do you think about that?
There might be something to that, you know, Mars being that fire planet.
Right.
You know,
I have noticed it a lot.
Depending on the person, you know, it might be balancing or it might be just totally imbalancing. You know, when you're balanced, the things that you do with your diet tend to reflect, you know, the opposite. In other words, that which you need to remain in balance. But if you're not balanced, then you tend to do things with your diet that just feed your imbalance. So you'll see like a lot of like fiery types who are already like kind of red in the face. They're loading up hot sauce all the time. And it's like, wow, you're just feeding, you know, this imbalance.
You know, she has the sun in the ascendant, and she tends to get pitta disorders.
Yeah, I can see that. That's exactly it. So I think hers is coming more from that just feeding the flame that's already high.
Exactly. And so she has digestive issues too, and she always has. She was born with digestive issues. I think
Taurus loves to eat, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Fact of life. They have a taste for things because of Venus. Venus is a rulership of Taurus.
Oh, how interesting. And Venus rules the taste, right? The sense of the taste.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. But she can't not eat it, you know. And even when she's running too hot and dry condition, I'm like, Nikki, can you at least maybe add some yogurt, you know?
Yeah, right. Something cooling
to it. And she goes, oh, I could probably add to it. Yeah, she said, but don't take my hot sauce away from me. That's pretty funny. Okay, anything else for Aquarius rising?
No.
Okay, so now we're on to Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac. And for Pisces, the full moon is in the 5th house, aspecting the 3rd house, the 9th, and the 12th houses. So, you know, since we were talking about fire, I mean, Pisces has Mars there still. So that brings a little fire to this water, because Pisces is a water sign. And the full moon is in one of the good fortune houses. It's a great place to have the full moon. Now, Rahu's there too. And the 5th house is one of the houses of the mind, and also rewards from your career, or rewards from work. So this might be something good that comes to you simply because the full moon gives. And then Rahu being there means that this is a house that's under construction and is going to be developed over the next 18 months. So let me see. And it's aspecting the 3rd house of skills, teammates, siblings, the fundamentals of any body of knowledge. The 9th house is another knowledge house, but it's higher knowledge. So like the 3rd is the fundamentals. It's like elementary school. And the 9th house is the higher elements of that body of knowledge. So this would be like university. And it's also, you know, spiritual knowledge. And then the 12th house too is also related to spirituality and expenses, and perhaps sometimes loss, though it depends on what else is going on in your chart. But the full moon is aspecting it. And every house that the moon is aspecting, Rahu is aspecting too. So that means these houses are also being constructed. They're being developed. And the full moon gives, so it will be shedding light on perhaps what skills you might want to develop further, or you'll get to see some reward with the skills that you have been developing. Let me see. And the ninth house too would be maybe what further education, higher education you may need. It's also the house of marriage. So the third is a communication house. Maybe you'll be learning some communication skills for your make your marriage go better. This is a great place too. When Venus is going through the ninth house, this is a significant house for a Venus transit as well. When I had Venus going through my ninth house, just not this past fall, it was like, I don't know, it was like a honeymoon period in my relationship with my husband. We've been married for 12 years, together for 20, known each other for 30, right? You would think there was nothing possible new that could come from that, but it did. It was very nice. So for Pisces rising, this could be when you meet somebody significant if you're single. If you're married, it can bring some, something good into your marriage, and the full moon aspecting it would help that quite a bit, because the fifth house is also the house of fun, creativity. You'd be doing some of that stuff together. And again, I'm seeing some things around fertility here, though, just because the fifth house is involved. Would you like to take it from here, Neeshee?
Sure. I'm going to speak to the spiritual heart of Pisces, because Pisces people are sensitive and spiritually attuned people. To whatever degree they may or may not develop that capacity in them, those who are oriented that way, by nature, I would say that this is pretty interesting because of the activation of the 5th, the 9th, and the 12th. And Venus is in the 9th. So I think what this full moon is showing them is like, what do they need to do? Third house, what kind of skills or what kind of, activities do they need to develop in? And, take that to the 5th house, which is where this full moon is, so they're needing to manifest something, some creative part of themselves, or tap into a creative stream. And that's going to be a big part of what they bring into that 9th house. And with Venus there, I think that's really a lot of that has to do with devotion. What do they want to devote themselves to, and in what way, or in what ways can they enhance their devotion to whatever spiritual path or entity or teacher or whatever it is that they're involved with? How can they enhance that? I think that's what that 3rd and 5th house is going to really be about. And the enhancement of that devotion is going to take them to the 12th, which is that spiritual domain.
Right.
So I think for Pisces, they've got Mars on their ascendant, which is nice because, Mars does have like a spiritual component to it. And that's that part of it that's, we see in Scorpio, which is like Tantra, It's using that spiritual fire, burning that spiritual fire, transforming that which is before us, purifying what's before us, refining, the quality of our energy into something higher. That's, what a lot of yoga is about, especially that's what Tantra is about. And that's sort of another aspect of Mars in the spiritual sense. So they have the fire for this. And if they can utilize this moon Rahu in the 5th and develop that manifests that, there's something they need to give birth to, right? As you were talking about fertility,
Yeah.
Well, they're sowing the seeds of something, fertile, and they need to like incarnate it now. Just release that. And that's going to be a whole thing once it happens. So I think Pisces should focus on that 5th house and really consider like the spiritual meaning of all of this, because I think that's just the vibe I'm getting is like, that's really what it's going to be about for them.
Okay, yeah, and there's just one more thing I want to say for Pisces rising, and that is the 2 GEMINI manifestation planets are also directly aspecting the house of the body and the self. And then Jupiter, Mars ruled by Jupiter and aspected by Jupiter too. That can be a wealth combination. So, and the Mars is the second house lord for Pisces. And so therefore, some things around, you know, resources, financial gain, financial stability, and creativity being involved with that too. And I'm thinking about somebody in particular because I know a woman who has this, and she's a career coach, and she's in a powerful, creative, creating phase right now for her business. So it's like perfect.
And there is a lot of water element going around for Pisces right now because of that moon, Cancer, the Venus in Scorpio. And there's Jupiter, you know, which is kind of a heavy planet, even though it's in a fire sign. But luckily they have Mars on the ascendant. Right. And it's a well-placed Mars, you know, it's in Jupiter's sign. It's aspected by Jupiter. I think they're going to be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, it's a grand trine going on here. Grand water trine.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
Which is something we don't usually talk about in Vedic astrology, but
that's true. We don't. This is probably a super, super psychic time for Pisces people.
Right.
We're already a little bit psychic to begin with. This is going to be like, this is the time.
And they look.
If you're an astrologer and you have Pisces ascendant, and you want to make some predictions, this is your moment.
Good time to get a reading.
Good time to get a reading. Good time to tune in.
Yeah.
You know, for everybody who's Pisces ascendant.
Especially with this Venus here in the 9th.
Especially Venus in the 9th. I think if there's any Pisces astrologers listening to this, this is your prediction moment. But if you're not an astrologer and you're listening to this, this is a great time to just trust your intuition, okay? Because whatever you feel is right during this time, like whatever you feel is like the thing you need to be doing to move forward in life, just do that. You know, that is really going to help you. Your intuition is just like right on the target during this moment.
It sure is. Yeah, because Mars is the 9th house lord.
Yeah.
And when you have that in the natal chart, that makes a person extremely psychic. Their intuition is really good. Wow. And it's also anyway, we could go on and on about this.
Yeah, that's right.
So, anything else about Pisces rising for you?
Nothing else for me.
Okay, then I will stop sharing for now. And we can talk about, the next full moon is in 2019.
That's right.
I believe.
That's right. And there will be an eclipse before that.
When is the eclipse?
I believe it's January 5th.
January 5th. Okay.
I'm going to do something, a video on that or something.
Okay. Is it sun, lunar, or solar eclipse?
I believe it's a solar eclipse, but I wouldn't put my life on that in this moment. I'd have to check.
Yeah, I'm going to have to delve more into eclipses, eclipse astrology.
I'm big on eclipse astrology.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Well, then maybe you could come on my channel too to talk about the eclipse then. Sure. That would be good. Well, maybe we'll arrange something like that.
Yeah, I have some techniques for looking at eclipses, and this is one of like my areas of interest with astrology, is really like getting into eclipses.
Okay, that's great. So it'll be a learning experience for me and my viewers. That would be awesome. So, what do you do at this time of year? Like, what kind of holidays do you celebrate? Because I think almost all cultures have something significant in the winter.
Yeah, you know, my guru called this time of year, you know, lighten everybody. Because it's kind of like this is a time to celebrate, you know, light. You know, that's one of the themes of this time of the year. You know, people put up lights, people put up a tree with lights. So it's about recognizing the light in everybody and like gathering together and enjoying that. So, you know, we put up a tree and we put lights up and we exchange gifts and do all of the usual things. But
seems like everybody loves the Christmas tree.
Yeah, why not?
I know. I love the Christmas trees.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
It really is. And it's really nice to turn off all the regular lights and then just have the living room lit up with the lights on the tree. It's really pretty.
It's a time of illumination, you know?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
It's wonderful.
So, and then of course in Western, we usually celebrate either Christmas or Hanukkah, something like that. And so I just want to wish everybody happy holidays.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Probably won't be seeing us together again until 2019.
That's right.
So thank you, Neeshee.
Thanks, Karen, for having me as always. Yes,
and so now I'm going to go back to here just for the last, I guess, commercial, which is if you enjoyed this video and want more on Ayurveda and astrology, and Neeshee and I are going to be doing some more videos on that, please hit like and subscribe so that you get notifications. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.